Welcome to Fight Fix with Frankie BARCA. This is episode 7. Usually I don't cover the fight nights, but I couldn't help myself. Obviously Dan Hardy was on the card. He's a friend of mine, fighting Anthony Johnson, and of course the Korean Zombie pulls out the first twister ever in UFC history, and that's absolutely massive for the 10th Planet System for my master Eddie Bravo, because he brought the twister into mainstream jiu-jitsu from his days in, I think it's middle school or year 8 or year 9 or whatever it might have been, and when he was in wrestling for I think it was Santa Ana or Santa Cruz, I can't remember which school it was, but he learned it as a way to pin the shoulders to the mat, taking it from the wrestlers, and they used to call it the wrestler's guillotine. But we already had a guillotine in jiu-jitsu, so Higgin and Jean-Jacques, basically Eddie mentions this in his breakdown, they used to call it the twister because it's kind of like a spine twister, you know, so they called it the twister and it stuck. So to see the twister on UFC, on a main card, and done so well was just enormous. And the Korean Zombie, props to him, man, over Leonard Garcia. He set it up beautifully. Obviously, Leonard Garcia had no idea what was happening. He must have thought that the Zombie was taking the back, because he had taken the back in the first round. So basically in that fight, the first round was, you know, the good thing about, I don't want to digress too much about the twister, so I want to get back onto that fight and then I'll get a little bit more into it. But in that fight there, it started really patiently for Garcia, which is really weird because Leonard Garcia, if you know him, has seen his fights in the past with Roger Huerta and that other fight with the Korean Zombie, which this was a rematch, one of the best fights of the century, according to the guys in the UFC. First round was very patient, but Leonard Garcia was good to see him pick his moment and throw down, a little tentative, and then all of a sudden the Korean Zombie took him down and took his back and couldn't put him away at the end of the first round. Second round, again, it was a patient start, and then they just started opening up. I couldn't believe they were just throwing down, and the Korean Zombie managed to get Leonard Garcia down on the ground. Garcia turned over on his back, gave his back, and then rolled to his back because he was about to be flattened out. In doing so, the Korean Zombie put a deep hook in underneath his bottom leg and locked it down. Of course, he's using it with elbows, get the hand behind the head, cinched it up, it was done. So it was just an amazing finish for us, definitely in the 10th Planet System with Eddie, and to see it on the biggest show on earth in the UFC was absolutely massive. So huge props to the Korean Zombie, and huge props to Eddie, and of course bad luck to Leonard Garcia. So can't wait to see the Korean Zombie fight again. So that's that one. AMIR SUDDALLAH and DAMARCUS Johnson at 170. I've got to tell you, AMIR SUDDALLAH, he always comes in shape. His striking is so tight. He's got very good stand-up, great hands, good head movement, great wrestling. Man, he just really put it on DAMARCUS Johnson. Very impressive first round from both fighters, I must say. They were both throwing down and going for it. But it was only a matter of time. You know, AMIR SUDDALLAH's got great hands. He sets such a furious pace and just takes the air out of you, and that's what happened. He ended up dropping DAMARCUS Johnson with a good right hand or a volley of blows, and then once on the ground, he had that beautiful wrist, because, you know, DAMARCUS Johnson was on his back and defending strikes, and SUDDALLAH's grabbed his wrist and pinned him and put him on his side and just started throwing some big bombs, some elbows, and TKO victory for SUDDALLAH. There's no way he could have gotten out of that one. It was just superior control there by AMIR SUDDALLAH over DAMARCUS Johnson. Good fight, man. AMIR SUDDALLAH is a good fighter. He's really grown. Oh, Dan Hardy, Anthony Johnson. Now, classic, you know, striker versus wrestler. And Anthony Johnson lived up to his expectations as a wrestler. Boy, he brought it. Basically, there was no doubt he dominated completely over Dan Hardy. And if he could beat Dan, it would be huge for him, because Dan's such a big name at 170. And for Anthony Johnson to put such a beat, it wasn't so much a beating, but he just controlled him so well. In the first round, you could see Dan throwing up his rubber guard, really containing the amount of damage he took, but he just kept getting taken down over and over again. And, you know, in rounds 2 and rounds 3, way too easy. Just kept taking him down so easily. Obviously, you know, Dan needs to look at his wrestling defense. I mean, we've seen it even with George. We talked about this at UFC 127. And that's just something that Dan has to work on. We all need to work on our wrestling. It's just when you don't come from wrestling base, those boys are tough. Eddie always talks about it, man. If you ask Eddie about what's the best base to have coming into MMA, or even Joe, they say wrestling, hands down. Just from work ethic and how hard they train and getting to the line to fight is an act of absolute courage and determination on its own. And, you know, props to Anthony Johnson. He absolutely did what he needed to do and got the job done. The Nogeira Davis fight, Phil Davis, you know, just overpowered Nogeira. Nogeira stuffed a lot of takedowns, but Phil Davis was just relentless. Nogeira, had some good exchanges, worked well with his hands. Davis put in a few combinations, just kept at the wrestling and just managed to just dominate with that and just went to it over and over again. And Nogeira did well to stuff it, but not enough to take the win. It was a unanimous decision for Phil Davis. So. But the biggest news for us, for me personally, was, man, having that twister in the books for UFC was just amazing. And it is amazing that more people don't go to that because it's such a good clinch from when you can't finish from the back and just getting that hook in and locking it down and going straight to it is high percentage, really high percentage. Not to mention the impacting you can do from that position before you finish. It's fantastic to see, man. I was just so excited, jumping for joy. And so is the whole entire 10th Planet Nation. So there you have it, UFC Fight Night, wrapped up again. It was a pretty good card. Considering it was free, it was awesome. So thanks for tuning in. If you want to leave your comments, please do so. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you.